Rylan Voss wiped the sweat from his brow, the hiss of the air recycler echoing in the empty scrapyard. Sparks flew from the welding torch in his hands as he worked to patch a dented hull panel on the small freighter he called home. The station was dead quiet tonight, the kind of quiet that pressed against your ears and made every sound feel alive. That's when he heard it, a low, guttural roar, so soft at first he thought it was a malfunction in the ship's systems. Then it came again, louder, desperate, almost human in its anguish. He froze, torch in hand, listening. The sound came from beneath a heap of broken plating and twisted metal. His heart thumped, but Rylan's curiosity won over fear. He dropped the torch and rushed to the pile, pulling pieces aside. The smell hit him first, metal, burnt wires and something earthy like wet stone. And then he saw it, a massive shimmering eye staring back at him. Its iris glowed like molten gold, the pupil a slit that seemed to measure him. The rest of the creature was hidden in shadow, bound in thick chains that dug into scales that glimmered in colors he couldn't name. Rylan swallowed hard. Dragons weren't supposed to exist. At least not outside of myths. And certainly not chained to the hull of an abandoned spaceship in the middle of a forgotten station. The creature let out a scream, a sound that rattled the metal walls and made his chest tighten. It raised its head slightly, showing rows of jagged teeth, but its eyes, those eyes, were pleading. He didn't hesitate. Fear was heavy, but he had tools, skill, and a stubbornness that had kept him alive more than once. He dropped to his knees and examined the chains. They weren't ordinary metal. They pulsed faintly with blue energy humming under his touch. Rylan's fingers traced the links, careful not to trigger whatever protective mechanism they held. A spark ran along the chain, and the dragon flinched, thrashing against its bonds. Rylan ducked as a whip of energy shot past him, melting a panel of the ship he'd been fixing. His ears rang, but he clenched his teeth and whispered, "Easy? I'm not here to hurt you." The dragon's roar softened slightly, a trembling growl that suggested it understood, or at least felt that he meant no harm. He reached for his cutting torch, adjusting the flame to the lowest setting, and touched it to the first chain link. It hissed and sizzled, the blue energy fighting against him. Sparks flew in every direction, and the dragon recoiled, letting out a shiver that shook the floor. Minutes passed like hours. Each link took careful work, each movement measured to avoid a lethal reaction. Rylan's hands burned, but he persisted. Slowly the chain began to weaken. A small section gave way, and for a heartbeat the dragon froze. Its glowing eyes scanned him, assessing, calculating, and then, it lowered its massive head, almost as if thanking him. Rylan allowed himself a small smile. The creature was still dangerous. Its tail lashed against the metal floor, and smoke curled from nostrils that flared in agitation. But the connection was there, a silent understanding forming in the middle of that derelict scrapyard. He had made progress. One chain was free, and for a moment hope flickered in his chest. Suddenly the ground trembled. A deep rumble echoed through the station, vibrating through his bones. The dragon's ears flicked back, its body tensing like a spring. Rylan froze. Outside, through the cracked viewport, he could see lights flickering, shadows moving across the station corridors. Scavenger drones. Or worse. He didn't have time to think. Every instinct screamed at him to act. The dragon let out a sharp hiss and slammed its massive claws against the hull, sending a shower of sparks into the air. Chains rattled violently, but one thick link remained stubbornly intact. Rylan took a deep breath, gripping the cutting torch like a lifeline. He glanced at the dragon, its eyes fixed on him, trusting him with a life it had no reason to. He swallowed fear and said almost aloud, "We do this together." The torch hissed against the final chain. The energy link sparked violently, throwing Rylan backward onto the floor. He landed hard, breath knocked out of him, but when he looked up, the chain was broken. The dragon's eye softened, and it leaned closer, its hot breath washing over his face. Then, in a sudden, startling motion, it released a wave of energy that sent metal debris flying across the scrapyard, cutting through everything not anchored. Sparks and shrapnel whirled around him, and Rylan realized the creature's power was far beyond anything he'd imagined. The dragon let out a roar, this time not of pain but of freedom. Rylan's heart pounded in exhilaration and terror. The drones outside shrieked in alarm, their sensors going haywire from the energy pulse. The creature's gaze met his once more, intelligent and commanding. Rylan understood in that instant that this wasn't just a dragon. This was a force that could change everything. And then a metallic crash echoed from above. The station shuddered violently. Something massive was moving in the darkness, approaching. The dragon hissed, tail lashing. Rylan scrambled to his feet, cutting torch still in hand, and whispered, "Looks like we're not alone." The dragon's wings unfurled slowly, stretching like molten silk, shimmering in the dim light. Rylan's stomach twisted. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. But what if it wasn't just scavengers? What if the chains had been holding it for a reason far more dangerous than he could imagine? The scrapyard fell silent again, save for the hum of the dragon's energy. Then, from deep within the shadows, a pair of glowing eyes appeared, watching them. Rylan's blood ran cold. The night had only just begun. Rylan's hands shook as he scrambled back from the scattered debris. The dragon's wings flared, brushing against the metal walls and sending a shower of sparks into the dim scrapyard. Its eyes never left him, watching, calculating, almost as if asking, "What now?" Rylan swallowed hard, still gripping the cutting torch. Freedom had come at a price. Whatever had chained this creature wasn't going to ignore it. Above the station, lights flickered again, closer this time. The shadows moved with purpose. Sleek, hovering drones, their sensors scanning for the dragon's energy signature. They weren't just scavengers, these were hunters. Rylan's heart pounded. The scrapyard offered little cover. If they fired, both he and the dragon would be torn apart in seconds. He had to act. "All right, big guy," Rylan muttered, trying to steady his voice. "We do this smart." He ducked behind a half-collapsed hull, dragging a loose panel with him. The dragon followed his lead, lowering its body to fit under the hanging metal. Its claws scraped the floor softly, cautious. Despite its size, it obeyed him, trusting him in a way Rylan had never felt before. He had no time to dwell on the wonder of it, he had to think fast. The first drone shot a pulse of energy through the scrap above, making it collapse with a deafening clang. Rylan winced as dust filled his lungs. The dragon let out a low growl, and its glowing scales shimmered brighter, pulsing with a strange blue light. Rylan realized something. Its energy could interfere with electronic systems. Maybe even the drones. He had to try. "Follow my lead," he whispered. He ripped open a panel on the floor, exposing exposed wires from a dead generator. Sparks arced across the metal. The dragon's eyes widened as he touched the panel to one of its scales. A wave of energy surged outward, crackling across the scrapyard, and the nearest drone faltered, its engine sputtering. Small victory. Rylan's heart lifted, but the pulse only affected one drone. More were coming. The dragon twitched, nervous but ready. Rylan knew he had to make a choice: stay and fight here or get the creature to a safer position. The station was unstable, ready to collapse under even a small shock. He spotted an old freight elevator shaft leading down to the maintenance tunnels. Narrow, cramped, perfect for hiding such a massive creature if he could guide it carefully. Down the shaft. "Now," he said, waving toward the dragon. It hesitated, wings folding slowly, massive claws scraping against the walls. But instinct and trust took over, and it followed, squeezing its body through the gap Rylan cleared with some heavy debris. Every movement was tense, the dragon brushing metal surfaces that groaned under the pressure. Sparks flew, dust choked the air, but they kept moving one step at a time. Halfway down, a second wave of drones appeared, cutting off the shaft's exit. Rylan's mind raced. If the dragon panicked, they'd be trapped. He had to buy time. He grabbed a panel from the wall and jammed it into the control console near the elevator shaft. The dragon's energy pulsed again, and the panel discharged a blinding blue shock that short-circuited the drone's sensors. They wobbled and spun, unable to track them for a moment. Small victory. Rylan's chest heaved. He had the dragon moving, but he knew the real danger hadn't even arrived yet. Whoever had chained this creature clearly knew its power. That meant bigger threats were likely on the way. The dragon's breathing was heavy, its eyes scanning the tunnel like a predator sensing danger, yet it stayed close, following Rylan's lead. He allowed himself a moment to feel that bond. The creature trusted him, and in return he had to be smart, fast, and brave. At the bottom of the shaft, the tunnel opened into a wider maintenance area. Broken machinery littered the floor, providing half cover. Rylan guided the dragon behind a stack of containers and crouched low, listening. The drone struggled to regain control, sending out search pulses. One pulse hit the dragon, and its scales flared like molten metal. Rylan's eyes widened. The pulse didn't hurt it. It made the dragon react instinctively, energy cascading along its back and tail, creating a temporary shield. The small payoff made him smile. Humans and dragons together could survive more than he thought. But then a rumble shook the floor beneath them. Rylan's stomach dropped. The ceiling cracked, sending chunks of metal down. The dragon's head snapped up, wings flaring instinctively. Rylan grabbed its snout, calming it. Easy, easy. Just me, buddy. The creature lowered its wings, trusting him again. That trust was fragile. If broken now, they'd be trapped. He glanced down the tunnel and froze. Red lights pulsed in the distance. Something larger than drones was coming. Not just mechanical hunters. Something alive, bigger, moving toward the station. Rylan swallowed his fear. He had freed the dragon, he had protected it, but now the stakes had escalated. Whatever was approaching wasn't here for them to negotiate, it was here to destroy. The dragon growled low, a vibration that shook the floor. Rylan gripped its clawed hand, his hand small against the creature's massive forearm. He realized the bond he had formed was no accident. He had given it a chance and now it would fight with him. And if he failed, everything in this sector could be in danger. From deep within the shadows, a massive silhouette emerged. Red eyes glowed, reflecting off the scattered metal, scanning, calculating. The dragon hissed and Rylan's blood ran cold. This was no ordinary threat. The chains hadn't been just containment, they had been protection, holding the dragon's power back from something far worse. Rylan tightened his grip on the torch. "All right, big guy," he whispered. "Let's show them what humans can do." The shadow moved closer. Sparks from the dragon's scales lit the tunnel. Rylan's heart raced, every instinct screaming that this was the moment that would define him, not just as a mechanic but as a human standing against the impossible. The massive figure lunged. The dragon roared and energy erupted, throwing Rylan against a stack of containers. Metal bent, sparks flew, and for a heartbeat, the entire tunnel seemed alive. The creature had awakened. And whatever was out there, it was hungry for more than just a fight. Rylan pressed himself against the containers, heart hammering as the massive shadow loomed closer. The red eyes glowed brighter, scanning the tunnel with precision. Whatever this was, it moved with intelligence, not mindless aggression. The dragon crouched beside him, muscles coiled, wings flickering with energy that lit up the dark like molten fire. "Okay, think," Rylan muttered. The cutting torch in his hand felt useless against something that big. But the dragon, his unexpected ally, was powerful. Its scales shimmered with that strange raw energy. And somehow he had to make that power work for them, not against them. The shadow lunged suddenly. Rylan yelped as sparks flew, but the dragon's wings snapped out, sending a wave of energy that slammed the intruder back into the tunnel wall. The creature grunted, staggering, but it wasn't defeated. Whatever it was strong. Bigger than anything Rylan had seen, and it clearly had a purpose. He realized the chains weren't just holding the dragon, they were restraining a force the shadow feared. Whoever had chained it had known exactly what could happen if it were free. Now Rylan held a choice: hide and risk being hunted, or fight and gamble everything on the bond he'd formed with this creature. "Time to decide, buddy," he whispered. The dragon's golden eyes met his. There was trust there, raw and unspoken. Rylan gritted his teeth and made a decision. If they were going to survive, he had to release the dragon fully, let it fight without restraint. But that meant taking a personal risk. If he miscalculated, both of them could die. He pressed a finger against the dragon's chest, where faint residual chains glowed. The dragon tensed, sensing the final restraint loosening. Sparks flared and a pulse of energy raced outward, lighting up the tunnel walls. The dragon's roar shook the station, deafening, vibrating Rylan's bones. It was no longer just a creature. Its power surged through the room, alive, unpredictable. The shadow hesitated for a split second, its eyes narrowing. That hesitation gave Rylan a critical insight. He saw the symbol etched into the creature's chains, an ancient sigil of a lost galactic empire. The realization hit him. This wasn't just a wild creature. It had been captured to contain its power, to stop it from challenging something far more dangerous than drones. Rylan's mind raced. If he didn't act fast, the shadow would call reinforcements, and the dragon would be hunted down before it even had a chance to defend itself. He had to trust the bond they shared. "Now," he muttered, and the dragon flexed its massive wings, stretching fully for the first time. Energy cascaded along its spine, washing over the tunnel in a blue-gold glow. The shadow lunged again, faster this time, but the dragon reacted with lightning speed. It unleashed a wave of energy that knocked the intruder backward, bending the walls, cracking the floor. Sparks and debris rained down, and for a heartbeat, the tunnel was a storm of power. Rylan held on to a jagged pipe, shielding himself from falling shards, but he smiled. Small victory. They were alive, and the dragon was proving it could fight. But the moment of triumph didn't last. The intruder recovered quickly, revealing itself to be not just a machine but a hybrid, a mix of alien technology and something organic. Its limbs flexed with unnatural strength. Rylan realized with a chill, it had been designed to hunt creatures like the dragon. And it was closing in. The dragon growled low, its roar reverberating through the walls. Rylan knew they couldn't just escape. They had to turn the tide. He scanned the tunnel quickly, spotting exposed wiring along the walls, a loose control panel near the ceiling, and a series of damaged conduits. If he could combine the dragon's energy with the station's unstable systems, they could trap the intruder. But the timing had to be perfect. "Trust me," he whispered, climbing onto the nearest conduit to get leverage. Sparks hissed under his hands. The dragon watched, wings flaring, muscles tense, ready to unleash full power on his signal. Rylan synchronized his movements with the pulsing energy of the creature. One misstep and they'd both be electrocuted, or worse. He yanked the final loose panel free and pressed it against the dragon's chest. Energy flared wildly, flowing into the conduit and then surging toward the approaching shadow. The hybrid shrieked, its sensors going haywire as energy tore through its systems. Sparks flew, wires shorted, and the tunnel shook violently. The intruder staggered, almost immobilized. Rylan landed on the floor, panting, adrenaline coursing. Small victory again. The intruder was not defeated, but they had the upper hand for now. The dragon let out a low, throaty rumble, its energy still crackling, scales glowing brighter. Rylan realized something staggering. This creature could do more than defend itself. It could change the outcome of battles, protect entire sectors, maybe even reshape the galaxy. His pulse quickened. Humans had freed it, nurtured its trust, and now together they were something far greater than either alone. But then a new sound cut through the chaos, a deep, resonant rumble from deep within the station. The shadow wasn't alone. Reinforcements. Bigger, stronger, coming for them. Rylan's stomach twisted. They had survived this encounter, but the real threat had yet to appear. The dragon lowered its head slightly, its eyes locking with Rylan's. Trust. Intelligence. Power beyond comprehension. Rylan knew they would have to fight and survive together. His fingers tightened around the cutting torch, a symbol of human ingenuity and courage. And then, from deep in the shadows, a series of faint glowing sigils appeared along the walls, pulsating with the same energy as the dragon. Something ancient, something waiting for the dragon to awaken fully. Rylan swallowed hard. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about choice, power, and consequences that reached far beyond the scrapyard. The dragon's wings flared again, energy pulsing with each beat, and Rylan whispered, "Let's finish this, our way." The intruders moved closer. Sparks flew. The station shuddered. And for the first time, Rylan realized that freeing the dragon had set in motion events he could never undo. The next wave of danger was coming, and it would test every ounce of human courage, intelligence, and determination. The tunnel shook violently as the shadows advanced. Rylan's heart raced. Sparks rained from cracked conduits, and the faint glow from the dragon's scales flickered across twisted metal. The hybrid hunters weren't just following, they were calculating, coordinating, adapting. Every instinct screamed at Rylan. This was no longer just survival. This was a fight against impossible odds. "Hold on," he shouted to the dragon, gripping a jagged pipe for support. The creature let out a low growl, wings folding tightly against its body, muscles coiled like a spring ready to strike. Its eyes scanned him, trusting him to make the call. Rylan's mind raced. There was no time for hesitation. He darted toward an exposed control panel, its wiring sparking wildly. The energy from the dragon had left the station unstable, and he had an idea. If he could overload the conduits in sequence, he could create a trap, using the dragon's energy as a weapon rather than just a shield. One wrong move and the station could collapse, taking them both. But he had no choice. "Ready?" he whispered. The dragon's wings flared, a warning and a promise. Rylan touched the first conduit with the torch, sending a pulse of energy into the wiring. The tunnel shook violently, sparks arcing across the floor. One hybrid hunter screamed as its system short-circuited, stumbling backward. Small victory. But the other shadows didn't falter. They advanced faster, calculating, relentless. Rylan moved quickly, climbing onto a platform above the tunnel. He tapped another conduit. The dragon leapt alongside him, wings spanning the tunnel, energy rippling off its scales. Sparks collided with shadows as Rylan guided the pulses. The hybrids faltered again, but they were resilient, adapting to every tactic. The station groaned under the strain. Metal bent, walls cracked, dust and debris filling the air. Rylan glanced down at the dragon, It was massive, terrifying, yet obedient, letting him direct its power. He realized something that made his pulse spike. The dragon wasn't just strong, it was intelligent. Every pulse, every movement, it followed his lead with perfect timing. Together they were becoming more than human or dragon alone. They were a force capable of extraordinary feats. One hybrid lunged faster than he expected. Ryland barely had time to react. The dragon snapped its massive tail forward, sweeping the creature off its feet and into the crumbling walls. Sparks and smoke filled the tunnel. Ryland stumbled, shielding himself, but the rush of adrenaline made him feel alive. Humans weren't just surviving, they were adapting, improvising, outsmarting a foe built to hunt. He tapped the final conduit. Energy surged through the station like a living thing. The remaining hybrids screamed, circuits frying, lights exploding. The tunnel lit up in flashes of molten blue and gold from the dragon's scales. Ryland could feel the heat, the raw power vibrating through his bones. The hybrids were faltering, confused, and he seized the moment. "Now," he yelled. The dragon unleashed a torrent of energy forward, not just a pulse but a controlled wave hitting the remaining hunter head-on. Sparks flew, wires melted, and the tunnel shook violently. Ryland tumbled onto the floor, coughing, but when he looked up, the hybrids were gone, or destroyed. The dragon's chest heaved, glowing faintly as its energy settled. Ryland realized he had witnessed something impossible. Together, human ingenuity and the dragon's raw power had triumphed. But victory was fleeting. The station was unstable. The floor cracked beneath them, debris falling around them like rain. The tunnel they had fought in was collapsing, and the shadows weren't the only threat. Ryland knew they had to escape before the entire structure came down. He grabbed the dragon's massive claw. "Come on, we move together," he shouted. The creature leaned close, wings folding slightly to maneuver through the collapsing corridor. Sparks and dust filled the air, smoke burning their eyes, but they pressed on. Ryland's mind raced, every step calculated, every move essential. One slip and it would all end here. Suddenly, the ceiling above them shuddered. A massive piece of metal fell, blocking part of the corridor. Ryland froze, heart hammering. The dragon growled low, nudging him to the side. Quick thinking, he realized they could use the debris to their advantage. He guided the dragon to kick against a support beam, redirecting the falling metal just enough to create a safe path. Humans could improvise, dragons could execute. Together, nothing seemed impossible. As they emerged into the open bay, the stars outside the station shimmered coldly. The nebula beyond lit the dragon's scales in dazzling colors. Ryland gasped. This wasn't just survival anymore. They had won a battle that should have been impossible. The dragon nuzzled him lightly, a silent acknowledgement of trust and partnership. He had freed it, and together, they had turned the tables on what had been designed to destroy them. But even as relief washed over him, a chill ran down his spine. Deep in the wreckage of the station, faint lights flickered, far below the surface. Sigils, like those etched on the chains, pulsed faintly in the darkness. Ryland realized with a sinking feeling that the dragon's awakening had triggered something ancient. Something much bigger than drones, hybrids, or collapsing stations. The dragon hissed softly, wings flaring in the darkness. Ryland understood instantly, the fight was far from over. Whatever those sigils were, whatever force they represented, it had been waiting. And now they had been noticed. He took a deep breath, gripping his torch tightly. "All right, big guy, whatever's next, we face it together." The dragon's eyes met his, glowing like molten gold in the dark. Trust, power, courage, they were all ready. And then, from deep within the station's shadowed core, a deep rumble echoed, different from before, heavier, alive. Ryland's stomach twisted. The dragon's energy flared brighter, wings spreading wide, scales shimmering like fire. Something was coming. Something massive. And this time it wasn't just a fight. It was a test of everything humans could be. Ryland's lungs burned as he staggered out of the wrecked station into the open void. Stars shimmered coldly beyond the cracked viewport, and the nebula painted the horizon in swirling purples and golds. The dragon crouched beside him, its massive wings folding slowly, scales still glowing faintly from the fight. For a moment, silence settled, a fragile, trembling peace. They had survived. Ryland glanced at the creature, awe and disbelief clashing with relief. "We made it," he whispered, though the weight of everything they'd faced pressed against him. The dragon let out a low rumble, almost like a purr, nuzzling his shoulder. He felt warmth in its presence, an unexpected companionship born in chaos. For a mechanic who had lived among scrap and solitude, This bond was unlike anything he'd ever imagined. But victory was not without consequence. The rubble of the station floated in the bay, remnants of their battle. Sparks flickered from damaged systems, and faint energy pulses echoed from the dragon, hinting at untapped power. Rylan realized the chains hadn't restrained just the creature. They had held back a force capable of reshaping worlds. And now, free, the dragon was a living weapon, intelligent, compassionate, and unpredictable. Rylan climbed onto the freighter's hull, brushing sparks from his jacket. "We have to move," he said. The dragon's eyes glimmered with understanding. Together they lifted off, soaring past twisted metal and through the nebulous swirling gases. Each beat of its wings radiated energy that seemed to heal some of the damage the station had suffered. It wasn't just a creature, they had become partners in survival and hope. As they drifted, Rylan studied the dragon's pulsing scales. Patterns shimmered along its skin, sigils from the chains, ancient markings that seemed to respond to him. They weren't just decoration, they were warnings, messages, a map of something larger. He traced the glowing lines with his fingers, heart pounding. This dragon wasn't just a survivor, it was a key to forces and knowledge that had been locked away for centuries. Suddenly, a soft hum vibrated through the freighter. Rylan's eyes widened. Other ships, distant but unmistakable, were locking onto the dragon's energy signature. The same signal that had drawn the hybrids, that had illuminated the ancient sigils, was now broadcasting to the galaxy. Whoever, or whatever, was out there had noticed them. Rylan's chest tightened, but he didn't panic. Fear was a tool, not a master. He turned to the dragon and ran his hand along its massive jaw. "We've come this far. Together we can handle what's next." The creature hissed softly, wings twitching, scales shimmering brighter. "Trust. Intelligence. Power beyond reckoning." They were not alone, but they were ready. The freighter's systems beeped warnings. Asteroids drifting in the nebula, debris from the destroyed station. Rylan grinned despite the tension. Improvisation, courage, and timing had carried them through impossible odds before. Now, with a dragon at his side, he felt unstoppable. He piloted the ship through the narrow twists of the nebula, the dragon's energy harmonizing with the freighter's engines, amplifying speed and control. It was synergy, human and dragon in perfect alignment. They emerged from the nebula into open space. Rylan exhaled deeply, feeling a rare sense of triumph. The galaxy stretched before them, vast, dangerous, and full of possibilities. Freed from its chains, the dragon hovered near him, wings reflecting starlight like molten metal. Rylan realized the true impact of his choice. One human's courage had freed a being that could protect countless worlds, change battles, and challenge powers no one dared confront. The dragon's eyes flickered, and Rylan sensed understanding. This was more than survival, it was partnership. They shared a bond forged in danger, built on trust and compassion. Rylan had risked everything for a creature others would have feared or killed. In return, the dragon had trusted him, fought alongside him, and revealed a strength humans alone could never wield. Yet the galaxy wasn't done with them. As they plotted a course toward a distant star system, faint pulses shimmered on the freighter's sensors, energy signatures similar to the dragon's, scattered across unexplored sectors. Rylan's stomach tightened. Chains had restrained one, but there could be more. Other creatures, other forces waiting to awaken. He gripped the controls tighter, adrenaline mixing with awe. "Looks like our adventure is just beginning," he said. The dragon let out a low, resonant growl, almost like agreement. Together they soared toward the unknown, ready to face whatever came next. In the distance, a faint glimmer appeared. A stationary vessel, ancient, colossal, its hull covered in the same glowing sigils as the dragon's chains. Rylan's heart skipped. Whoever built that ship had known the dragon's power existed. And now they had noticed it was free. He swallowed hard, staring at the massive silhouette against the stars. "We're not alone," he whispered, excitement and dread mingling. The dragon's wings flared in response, energy pulsing across the freighter like a heartbeat. They had survived impossible odds together. And yet, this was only the beginning. As the freighter moved closer, the sigils on the ancient ship glowed brighter. Rylan felt a thrill of anticipation. The galaxy held secrets, challenges, and dangers he could never have imagined. But one thing was clear: humans could rise above fear, trust in courage, and face the impossible. And with the dragon at his side, Rylan was ready to meet it head-on. The freighter and dragon moved into the unknown, leaving the wreckage behind, carrying with them a bond that would change the galaxy, and a story that was only beginning to unfold.